Okay, I'm done with the rough part of the spoon, and what we need to do now is make it more precise and the exact shape that we want it to be. If we want it round, we round out the edges. If we want it to be square, we have to do that. And you can do this with a knife. It takes a long time, and then you use like 80 grit sandpaper. Actually works quite well as well to do this. But it takes time, and it's quite tedious work. And this is the point where I actually use this most of the time. I'm going to show a little bit how to do it when you're working with sandpaper at first. So you just first you can rough it out a little bit more with make it like shape it better with a knife, and then you use this one. You just like this, continue working with this one. Until you have the final shape that you actually want to use. It's gonna take a while. You also like on this part, and yeah, do it all over it. I'm gonna use this now for a little bit, so I'll show you. It's hard to speak when this one is used to. Like I said, it's becoming a mess when you use that stuff, so I don't, like you could see, it's technically possible to shape the whole thing using this, but yeah, it's really messy to do it. Right, so shape is done, and now I'm gonna start using 80 grit sandpaper to get a nice final finish, like the first part, and then we're gonna move to a finer grit. So you do this until you find that there is no low spots anymore. Get an even, nice surface. Alright, so yeah, I think that looks better. So next part is sandpaper. Sandpaper inside of this. This is actually a good time also if you want to make the walls a little bit thinner. It's easier to do it slowly with this without making it break through to the outside. You can do much more precise adjustments with this. So yeah, just go wild, I guess, and make it as thin walls as you dare. You can also use like one of these if you want to, the inside. Sometimes do, but it's quite late and I don't want to disturb my neighbors right now, so using 80 grit, and of course it's not gonna stay at 80 grit, but that's the coarsest one I have to start out with. Can take quite a bit of work to do this because it's it's a raw cut, like you cut with the knife directly on the wood here, so some of the low spots will be quite low, so it can take some time to do this. And I don't know, some people like to have like the cut finish on the inside. I don't. But I've seen some people who try to make it kind of like little wood chips. If you make it symmetrical enough, I guess, the cuts can look quite cool. Too much work for me. I enjoy the sanding, to be honest. I'll see more about that later. Because yeah, we're gonna take this one to 2000 grit. It's gonna shine like it's made from stone. I hope. If you want to do that, it's the most important part is to do a good job with the high grits, because if you leave a low point or a scratch that's bigger than 80 grit now, it's gonna take forever to take it away with the lower grits. Sometimes it's actually it's easier, like if you have a big low spot here, you want to remove it, it's better to go back to the 80 grit on this specific area, remove that part, and then start working back up to the grit that you were at to begin with, because it takes forever to remove like an 80 grit scratch with 500 grit sandpaper. So I saw some low spots and a little bit of a scratch here that I want to remove. I'm gonna see it later anyway. Continue on the bowl. I'm doing a lot of it up at the top because I want it to be round and nice round transition. Usually I would go with this one here and just make it perfect, but I'm gonna do it with sandpaper now. Yeah, so this is basically it. You just continue doing this until you have a nice surface without any low spots or any scratches inside, and then you go to then we'll continue. Right, I've now finished the modification of the bowl, and I also finished using the 80 grit sandpaper on the whole spoon. So I think the next step will be to cut it, because I now know that I won't be doing any more work on the bowl, and I won't do any more shaping with the knife, so it's actually easier to work now if I don't have it attached to the stick. So yeah. And I have one of these. It's just like a Japanese saw, but you can use pretty much any saw that you have. Even like one of these from before I had a real saw, I actually used even this one. So it's, I mean, you could technically do it with a knife as well if you just carve it off. It's absolutely possible. But I will do this off camera because it's gonna just be awkward to do it like this. I have to put it against something that's more stable than my table. So I'll be back when I've sawed it off. Right, so it's now cut, and you can use the knife and just chip off what's left of the stick, or you can use one of these, and I tend to use this one, so I will do that, but just perfectly as good to use the knife. there we go. And now 80 grit sandpaper. I think using this one is very good for the round parts, to kind of adjust it until you get symmetry. But it is like, this is one of the problems, and this is another one. I live in an apartment, so there will be some cleaning up. Use of the vacuum cleaner every time I use it, and also you kind of spread this, so there will be a lot of dusting the apartment after using it, so I try to use it as little as possible. If you have like a vacuum cleaner or some kind of yeah, like in a workshop, you might have a shop vacuum or something like that can pull it in immediately. That would make life easier, I guess, using one of these. That's the problem with living in an apartment, not having a workshop. You kind of have to adapt to what type of tools to use. I mean, I enjoy doing this with hand tools. It's not a problem for me. It's actually one of the things that I enjoy the most. I actually enjoy the sanding, especially. Like perfection when you're doing the sanding. It's quite enjoyable. I need to work a little bit more on it. Right, so I think that should be good, and now I step it up to 150 grit. Maybe I could go with 220 immediately. Yeah, I'll go with 220 grit. You can go, I mean, like 150, 220 and so on, but it all depends on your liking. If you like doing big steps or smaller ones. I would actually suggest that you use all the different grits until you kind of get familiar on how big the step you can make, depending on what kind of wood you're using and so on. This is birch, so I know it's not a hard wood to work with. It won't take a lot of time to go from 80 grit to 220. But if I was working, for example, with maybe ash or something like that, a harder one, or hickory or something like that, yeah, I wouldn't jump any steps. I would go 80, 150, 220, so on. Because it can be quite hard to get the scratches away between the different if you jump too many grits. But I'll continue with this and I'll get back when I finished it. Okay, so I lost some footage because I didn't check if I turned the camera on, so we've gotten a little bit further in the process than you actually have been seeing. So yeah, I think we were at 150 grit or 220 grit or something like that. Now moved up to 500 grit, so yeah. And this is a perfectly good place to stop if you want a decently nice spoon. Just add some oil, I'll show that later. But I'm kind of extreme, I like them to shine, like mirror shine. So we're going to take it a little bit further. I'm going to start going to 800 grit. I'll show you the results when I'm done. I mean, I don't think it's necessary to show you how to use sandpaper. You just continue doing what you've been doing. Find the low spots, find the scratches and remove them until they're you have a perfect finish. And then you move to the next grit. So yeah, I will be back when I'm done with the 800 grit and show the results. Right, 800 grit is ready. And I want to show you another system that I use. I usually don't use it when I'm until I get to like the last part of making the spoon, because these lower grit pads, they actually take away quite a lot of material pretty quickly, and you don't have the control really. You get a lot of flat spots, and it's hard to make these round shapes when you use it. So I don't usually use the low grit ones, like I think this one is 80. But the two last ones are really, really nice to use in the last stages of polishing this thing. I'm just gonna double check that actually get the correct one, because they are not kind of numbered. So yeah, these are the two last ones. I think it's 1,000, 2,000. Usually you don't need anything more than that. So slap on the 1,000 grit one. It's just like Velcro. You have Velcro on this one as well. Just push it there and yeah, I'll show you. Yeah, so there we go. 2000 grit. Only thing that's left now is the inside, and I don't have a good tool for getting in there, so that has to be done by hand. So I'll do that, and I'll get back when we're ready to put some oil on it. Alright, we're at 4000 grit. Skipped a few steps, but yeah, 4000 grit, and it's time for the oil. So I have, I'll get the bottle weight. It's called Danish oil from Rustens, and it's I guess mainly used for furniture and so on, but I use it for knife making as well. And I think gives a really nice finish, and also it protects the wood from liquids and being able to use it for actually eating and so on. And it is actually food safe, so it shouldn't be a problem. And let's start. Just dip a little oil in some paper, and then you just apply it. I mean, there are many different ways of doing this, but I usually rather have a couple of thin layers, let each layer soak in, but I really don't like using too much of it, because it takes forever for it to... It actually becomes sticky, and this oil, the oil that doesn't get absorbed into the wood, actually polymerizes, so you kind of get an even nicer and kind of almost protective finish on the outside, and it takes forever for it to polymerize if you put on too much of it. So I usually use a paper, and I just kind of see that all the wood have taken in some of the oil, and I just kind of dry it off and put it away for a couple of hours, and then I apply a second layer. Guess it's a little bit more maybe important that you have a little bit extra in here, to make it really waterproof in there. But let's see if we can actually get some make all those colors and stuff pop. Yeah, the oil really makes a difference, especially for like birch. So yeah, and then you just repeat this a couple of times, and then I would actually, again, as soon as you have it done, I would take like maybe a 2000 grit or 3,000-4,000 grit, 2,500, so a very high grit sandpaper, and remove any like, if it's sometimes some oil can make it so that it's uneven. You can kind of take that away, because there's actually there's actually oil inside the wood as well. So even if you take away a couple of micromillimeters or micrometer, I don't know what you call it, it's still going to be protected, so it's not a problem. So yeah, let's call that a day, and I think this is done. I might add a couple of photos of the final result at the end of the video. Bye! Okay, so work done, I polished it, and yeah, I'm happy with the result. Still, I did not polish it in here because I don't want to remove the polymerized oil surface. I want to keep as much as possible of the stuff that's in there. So, and it's mostly when you use it, it's not going to look very well anyway. In a couple of uses, it's still a spoon after all. Oops. Yeah.